The BRDC British Formula 3 Championship, the final race weekend of what has been a classic season of Formula 3 racing, with more race winners and more podium finishes than we've seen for a long time in what has been a highly competitive year of racing. And it all comes down now to the final 3 races on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. One race took place yesterday, which was won by Jonathan Hoggard, the man who is second place in the championship. The points leader, Clement Novalak, was only 4th, but can still wrap up the title in this race. It's going to be a fascinating encounter, this one. 20 minutes or 12 laps, whichever one comes first will be the distance. And this is the always entertaining reversed grid race. So every one of the finishers from yesterday, and actually everyone did get to the end of yesterday's race, so the 15 finishers from yesterday's race have been flipped. And so the person that finished last, Chris Wright, is on pole. And Jonathan Hoggard, the race 1 winner and championship contender, starts right at the back of the grid, a few places behind now his big rival Clement Novalak. But these reverse grid races can often get messy. We saw this last year. Linus Lundqvist, championship contender at this point last season, ended up going off at the very first corner of this race because he was starting in the middle of the pack, got tangled up with some of the drivers at the first corner, and that was that, and it very much hampered his championship aspirations. So this race then is going to be significant. Essentially, if Jonathan Hoggard can get himself ahead of Clement Novalak, then the championship battle will go down to the final race later on this afternoon. Only Novalak can wrap up the title in this race because he still has this very healthy championship margin. There are 35 points available in the final race of the weekend later on, so Novalak needs to make sure that he's more than that amount of points clear of Hoggard at the end of this race, because actually Hoggard's won more races than Novalak, so if it were to be a tie-break, then the British driver would, in theory, come out on top. So we'll get to the points permutations in a bit more detail later on, but generally speaking, that is how it works. It's going to be a very tense race, no doubt, for the pair of them, who have had mixed fortunes, it must be said, when it comes to reverse grid races so far this year, because we've seen on occasion that Jonathan has rather struggled to make the same sort of progress through the field. In fact, I'm looking back at the results from earlier on in the season, and I think only on 3 occasions has Hoggard beat Novalak in a reverse grid race, and we've had 7 reverse grid races. So the advantage is very much with the points leader, and he starts in front of Hoggard. It must be said that part of the reason that Jonathan struggled to beat Novalak in reverse grid races because often he starts behind him on the grid because he keeps on winning the first race of the weekend. Hoggard's been able to do that on a number of occasions this season. He's done it at Silverstone, at Donington Park, and also at Brands Hatch last time out. Hoggard won the first race, which means he has to start right at the back of the grid. Well, Chris Wright in the number 35 car, by comparison, has had a pretty good time of it with these reverse grid races at times. He's been able to get himself a few half-decent results over the year, including some podium finishes. He'll start from pole for this one then on used tyres. Remember, they all have a limited amount of tyres they can use over the course of the season, so Chris Wright is on some used tyres. Nazim Azman alongside him likewise, with Pavan Ravashankar and Josh Mason sharing the second row. They're both on brand new rubber, so that might give them an advantage, well, in a number of areas really. Obviously the grip levels once they get going will be better for those drivers, but also actually off the line newer rubber can sometimes play into your hands. So that's going to be an interesting little situation to keep an eye on as those two try and take advantage, particularly in the early stages of their fresh tyres. Lucas Pettersson starts 5th and Hampus Eriksson 6th. As far as championship contenders are concerned, only Novalak and Hoggard can win it now. Ayrton Simmons, who arrived here 3rd in the championship, could have still, in theory, wrapped up the title, but he was only 8th yesterday, so he's out of contention now. So it's only those 2 you need to worry about. Hoggard, the number 3 car, starts at the back of the grid. Novalak, number 12, starts in front of him. Novalak, number 17, starts 12th. And if he finishes even 1 position in front of Hoggard, that's it. He's won the title. So this is that's definitely his main priority. He doesn't really care where he is in the order. As long as you finish the race, you're going to get some points. And so as long as he's in front of Hoggard, that will be more than enough for Clement Novalak. Green flag lap that then gets underway. the good news about this reverse grid race being the one in which the championship might get decided is that actually it doesn't necessarily affect most of the drivers at the front of the grid, so they can just have a nice fight for the race victory between themselves, and there are drivers up there who are looking for their first win of the year, Chris Wright being the most obvious one. Nazim Azman has had a win. It was a reverse grid victory at Brands Hatch last time out. So Azman once has been on the top step of the podium. Pavan Ravashankar, meanwhile, I don't think has been. No, he's had a second place finish, but no better than that. Here's how that reverse grid race grid lines up then, with Chris Wright on pole for Fortec and Nazim Azman in the Chris Dittman racing car alongside. Ravashankar and Josh Mason on their fresh rubber start on row number 2 together, and then on the third row, Lucas Pettersson with 2 fresh tyres and 2 used tyres, and Hampus Eriksson on the same tyres that he raced on yesterday. Ayrton Simmons and Caelan Frederick are next up. Ayrton Simmons could be one of the favourites to challenge for a podium here. Neil Verhagen is 9th on the grid, with Sasakor Chimankol, another driver that has fresh tyres, rounding out the top 10. Ulysse de Palve and Clement Novalak, then the championship leader, starts 12th on the grid. That could be enough still for him to wrap up the title. Maldonado is 13th, with Kieran Jewis in 14th, the man that's 4th in the championship and gaining actually on Simmons at the moment, with Jonathan Hoggard, the winner yesterday, coming from right at the back of the grid. Well, the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship is the key stepping stone, many people say, on the single-seater racing ladder in the UK. If you want to pursue a career in single-seat racing, be that Formula 1, IndyCar, or anywhere you fancy really, then having a British Formula 3 title on your CV is certainly not a bad thing. And for Clement Novalak, a driver who hadn't really raced in the UK before this season, he probably didn't start, it must be said, as the pre-season favourite. Jonathan Hoggard had come up out of the British Formula 4 Championship last year, and so he knew the circuits. The cars obviously are quicker, but it's not an enormous jump in performance, and so he probably was the favourite coming into the year. But Jonathan, despite the fact that he's been able to take 6 race victories now, just hasn't had the same sort of consistency as Novalak. Novalak has had this whole sequence of podium finishes. He's had 8 podium finishes over the course of the year, but Hoggard's had 2 non-finishes, one of them at Snetterton and one of them at Donington Park, actually, in this equivalent race a few months ago. So Hoggard, I'm sure that will be playing on his mind, what happened in the reverse grid race here in July, where unfortunately he was another victim of first corner contact, I seem to remember. So Jonathan will above all else want to make sure he survives the first turn, but he kind of has to go on the attack, because even if he finishes a couple of positions in front of Novalak, whilst that mathematically will take the title down to the wire, realistically Novalak just sort of has to finish that last race. The more points that Hoggard can take out of Novalak in this race, the more realistic his championship hopes become. But first of all, he's got to catch and get past Clement just to keep it alive, and that's just not going to be easy with those several positions between them. There's Caelan Frederick, then, the man that, despite having flashes of promise, including 2 race victories this year, both of which were in reverse grid races, incidentally, he is only 8th place in the championship, arriving at Donington Park, and in the number 8 car, he starts 8th on the grid as well, so there's some symmetry to that. But the rest of the grid is lined up. This is it then. This could be the race in which the 2019 BRDC British Formula 3 Championship is decided. On the front row of the grid, Chris Wright and Nazim Azman prepare to launch their cars towards the first corner at the start of 12 laps of racing on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. Away we go for the penultimate time in 2019, and a good start made by Azman from the outside of row number 1 by the looks of it, and he's already up alongside Chris Wright and ahead of him fractionally as they turn into the first corner. There's a lock up further back there from Josh Mason up the inside line, but it's Nazim Azman that gets the race lead through Redgate Corner. Then right in second, Ravashankar is there in 3rd place, and it's 3 abreast further back, and this is where the championship contenders are, remember. Hoggard appears to be ahead of Kieran Jewis already, and it doesn't look as though Clement Novalak is making a huge amount of progress. There's Novalak on the inside line, and they all get together in front of him, and somehow I think both of our title contenders get through it. But Novalak, oh no, contact for Novalak, he's off the road. The championship leader is off the road. He's tangled with the number 3 car of Jonathan Hoggard, and would you believe it, the top 2 in the championship have both gone off halfway around the opening lap, and they will rejoin, but a long way behind the rest of the field. That was utter drama, and we could never have predicted that. But Jonathan Hoggard, after a brilliant start, had got himself on turns with Novalak, and then they've both banged wheels and both got off the track. So now we need to watch to see how much more progress they can make. Down into the braking zone we go at the chicane for the first time, and well, we Thought there might be some drama in this race, but that was more than we ever anticipated. Caleb Fredericks had a bad start as well. Look, he's dropped down into 13th from 8th on the grid. As towards the sharp end, Ravichanka loses 3rd position there to, I think that was Lucas Pettersson down at the Melbourne hairpin. And Ayrton Simmons now pulls up to attack as well. Into the Goddard's hairpin they go for the first time, and it's all getting very, very messy indeed as this, as is often the case in the early stages of these reverse grid races, for obvious reasons. You've got quick drivers coming from the back, you've got some slightly less quick drivers starting at the front that are maybe fading. Simmons there with a decisive move up the inside of Lucas Pettersson, gets into 3rd position at Redgate Corner, and Ayrton Simmons is now odds-on favourite, you'd say, to win this race. He's into a podium place already at the start of the 2nd lap of the race, having started down in 7th place on the grid. More side-by-side action now down to the old hairpin. That's Neil Verhagen going through on the inside of Hampus Eriksson. That slows Eriksson down, someone's on the dirt in front of them, and that's Ravichanka. So Pavel Ravichanka unfortunately throws away a top 5 place. Bounces back on the road, but the number 28 car out of contention. Kian Jewis there, the green and white car going through, but then onto the grass. He started all the way down in 14th position, just got up the inside very briefly, got himself ahead, in fact, of Hampus Eriksson, but then ran wide of McLean's, and Hampus has got the position straight back again. So Novalak crucially rejoined from his grassy moment ahead of Hoggard, so despite the fact they're 14th and 15th respectively, that would actually be enough for Novalak to take the title, or potentially it would be anyway. So it's going to be very, very close this, I think, but I think that Novalak might just be doing enough here. But there's a long way to go, of course, and it may turn out that the fight for 14th place in the race turns out to be the most significant fight in the race, because that's where the championship's being decided. At the front, though, it's very, very close, as it has been since the drop of the green flag. There goes the 33 car through of Manuel Maldonado. And here, towards the back of the field, Ravichanka's off again, and that will hand both Novalak and Hoggard another position. And Novalak now pulls up alongside somebody else to try and get through. Is that Josh Mason he's now getting alongside? So Mason was fighting for a podium place at first corner, and now he's all the way down to the back of the grid as well. So there is your points leader then. Car number 17, Clement Novalak. Started 12th, he's now into 13th place, but Jonathan Hoggard is right on his tail. So Hoggard must beat Novalak in this race to keep his championship hopes alive. Doesn't really matter where they finish in the race. If he finishes in front of him, then that will be enough. There are also bonus points, remember, for however many places you gain in the race. So for each position that you gain from your starting position, you get a bonus point. So Hoggard started 15th, has gained 1. Novalak started 12th and has lost a position, so he's getting no bonus points. So that is also playing into the hands of Hoggard here. Through Coppice Corner, back along the exhibition straight, and Novalak could do with getting a car between himself and Jonathan Hoggard. The trouble is that whilst this is only 12th position that he's trying to take, he's actually racing against Josh Mason, who is a quick driver, and Josh Mason has been a front runner. He's been a race winner, in fact, earlier on this season, so Josh Mason is not going to be easy to overtake. There goes the 33 car of Manuel Maldonado, defending from Ulysse de Pauw, the Belgian driver. And those two are scrapping over 9th position through the Melbourne hairpin, but the blue and white car of de Pauw is not able to get through. Continues to apply the pressure, though, sits right underneath the rear wing of the car in front. Then you've got Caleb Frederick just outside the top 10 in 11th position. And then behind in that all-important fight for 12th, which still sees Mason in front of Novalak and Hoggard, but the three of them covered by just over a second at the end of the 3rd lap of the race. So Asman leads the way then, Simmons 2nd, Chris Wright 3rd, and hanging in well, but he is under pressure now from Lucas Pettersson, with Neil Verhagen rounding out the top 5 at the moment. Fastest lap belongs to Ayrton Simmons, but no bonus points for fastest laps in this championship, so that makes no real difference. But Simmons has got 2nd place away from Chris Wright somewhere, so we haven't actually spotted that. But Ayrton Simmons, with that fastest lap, has moved ahead of Chris Wright on the previous lap, but he's only 1.9 behind Nazim Asman, so you'd have to say Simmons is continuing now to be the favourite to win the race, but whether he's going to have time to get there or not, I don't know. At that rate, he should do, though, because he was half a second quicker than Asman on the previous lap, and he's only 1.9 behind. Meanwhile, Lucas Pettersson thought about going to the inside of Manuel Maldonado into the chicane there. Manuel gets through still in front of him. There are the leaders then, so Asman being caught by Simmons, and then for 3rd place, Pettersson up the inside. He's going to go through, and he might bring Verhagen with him. Number 26 car tries to thread the eye of the needle, but he gets very rudely elbowed out of the way there by Chris Wright, who'd rather like to hang on to his 4th place, but he's not going to be able to, because Verhagen then dives from the outside to the inside at Goddard's and does move ahead of him. And there's now a whole sea of cars immediately behind Chris Wright, looking to also try and take advantage now. First of all, Sassakorn Chimengal, then Hampus Eriksson, and then Kian Jewis in 8th position. Back through Redgate Corner again. And now, according to my timing screen, Jonathan Hoggard has not come through. He's in the pit lane, according to my timing screen. So is this the end of the championship hopes then for Jonathan Hoggard? He may have some damage, of course, after his issue early on. We're not seeing it on the screen, but on my timing screen, Jonathan Hoggard is noted as being in the pit lane, and there he is! Jonathan Hoggard in the pit lane, and surely this is it now. He's going to get going again fairly quickly. They were clearing grass, I think, out of the radiators, which presumably was causing the car to overheat. Now, you have to assume, though, that that is also an issue for Novalak, because they both went off at the same part of the circuit, onto the same bit of grass. So it is entirely possible that Novalak might have to make a pit stop as well, but Hoggard for now has dropped way behind, and so Novalak can sort of afford to nurse the car home now. So that might be our championship more or less decided. Let's concentrate then on the racing within the top 10, where this man, Kieran Jewis, the green and white car, has just set the fastest lap of the race to close right onto the tail of Hampus Eriksson. In front of them, though, there's another place being lost by Chris Wright. Sasakor Chimengol goes through on the inside and takes over 5th position with it. That was a nice move there. What is arguably the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit anyway, down at the Melbourne hairpin, especially if the car in front doesn't defend, which Chris Wright did not. And he might be regretting that now slightly. There's Ulysse de Pauw, excuse me, the number 55 car with Caleb Frederick right behind him. This is a big group of cars, basically the majority of the field absolutely together as we head on to the 6th lap of 12, so nearly halfway through this penultimate round of the championship. Novalak has continued on, he's not pitted yet, so he's still in 13th position, and at the front of the field, Ayrton Simmons took another 3/10 out of the leader, so 1.4 is now all that separates Asman and Simmons. There's Novalak, so blue and orange car. He's dropped away now from Josh Mason. He doesn't really need to be sitting underneath the rear wing of Mason, because that's only going to increase the engine temperatures anyway, and if he is concerned that there's any grass in the radiators, which there may not have been, he may have got away with it, partly because he spent most of that off-track excursion with all 4 wheels off the ground. So I suppose if you're flying through the air, you're not picking up any grass in your radiators, but I'm sure it'll be in the back of his mind, especially if the team have told him that Hoggard has had to pit for that reason. Assuming it was that reason anyway. It was a fairly quick pit stop, and he left behind him an awful lot of the Donington Park scenery that he'd taken with him from his excursion at Starkey's Corner. Down into the hairpin, another move being made on the inside, and a big lock up there for the number 24 of Hampus Eriksson, but he does now get past Chris Wright, who seems a little vulnerable down at that Melbourne hairpin, and Kieran Jewis moves alongside to attack as well. That's the outside into Goddard's hairpin though. Chris Wright should be able to maintain the inside ground, which he does. Jewis tries to get a better exit from the corner, tucks into the slipstream, and I'm pretty certain we'll have a dive here into Redgate Corner. He's within striking range. Chris Wright can't quite close the door, and so yeah, the inside goes Kieran Jewis. And Chris Wright, well, he's going to try and fight back here through Hollywood. He's still got his nose in front, and the next corner's a left-hander, but it's easy flat in these cars, so Jewis can just hang on around the outside, get the inside of the old hairpin, but no, Chris, fair play to him. He's not going to let him have this without a fight. They're still side by side as they go through Starkey's, and they're still starting to bunch up now and bring into play Maldonado, de Pauw and Frederick, and so as one now, the 5 drivers all appear at McLean's. Finally, Jewis has gone through, de Pauw's on the grass, and that's going to allow Caleb Frederick up the inside of him. Great racing here then in the midfield, and Caleb Frederick and Kieran Jewis are the 2 drivers that are able to gain places there, and now it looks as though Manuel Maldonado will be able to as well. Goes to the outside of his teammate, who surprisingly does not make things too difficult for him. Maldonado sweeps ahead. Mason, there's Novalak, and the number 17 car makes its way down the hill. 13th position is not usually the kind of place that you see a driver finish to wrap up the title, but that is what appears to be on the cards here for Clement Novalak. He will score for finishing in 13th place 3 valuable championship points, and that should be enough to get him over the line. There are no drop scores in British Formula 3 racing, so every race counts, and this one is going to count even more, you'd imagine, for him, because it could be the one in which he takes the title. Meanwhile, Caleb Frederick and Chris Wright continue to debate 9th position, excuse me, but actually that little look up the inside for Chris has delayed him on the exit of the corner, and so Ulysse de Pauw now moves up to attack, but can't get to the inside into the old hairpin. Bit of a mistake there from Wright again though, just dipped a wheel onto the grass coming out of the old hairpin, so needs to be careful about track limits as well. We've seen him running wide a couple of times now, and so he continues to do it. He could incur the wrath of the race stewards. Now this is the fight for the race lead then. Ayrton Simmons has almost got to Nazim Azman now. He's only 8 tenths behind. The trouble is, the closer he gets to the race leader, then the more he will be running into turbulent air from the car in front. That's going to affect his downforce levels and perhaps restrict his opportunities to attack. But he's got enough speed, I think, here that he should be able to compensate for a fair bit of that. Heads up the hill then, towards Goddard's corner. Azman from Simmons was 8 tenths of a second. As you can see, it's definitely come down on this lap. Through the last turn they go, back across the start-finish line. We'll compare the lap times then as they come to the start-finish line now. 8 laps in the books. New fastest lap for Ayrton Simmons, so the dirty air isn't affecting him too much, and he's only 6 tenths behind. But then Sasakor Chibangal goes even quicker, so Sasakor Chibangal in 5th position with a 125.352 was actually just over a tenth of a second quicker than Ayrton Simmons on that lap. So Simmons down through the Crater curves, chasing after Azman. He'll be getting a bit of a slipstream, of course, through the high-speed sections of the track. It's through the corners that he's going to be losing downforce. Lucas Pettersson then in 3rd position. Now, has Lucas Pettersson, pretty sure, yes, he had a race win, didn't he, in a reverse grid race at Snetterton, but has not been on the podium since then. So Pettersson in 3rd place will be keen to hang on to that if he can, but he's got Neil Verhagen and the very rapid Sasakor Chibangal catching him. And so those three, you can see weaving around there, trying to break the toe down the exhibition straight, and it's definitely the 3rd car in line. Chibangal has got the best pace at the moment. Then Kian Dewis moving up to attack Hampus Eriksson. The leaders are very close together, and Ayrton Simmons goes for it on the inside from a long way back into the Melbourne hairpin. They were close, but I didn't think they were that close. But Ayrton Simmons was super late on the brakes, runs a bit wide on the exit though, and so Azman fights back again. They're wheel to wheel into the final corner. Nazim Azman going to try and go right round the outside, and there's only one way this will end. Ayrton Simmons will not leave him any room. He'll put him out over the curb, but actually was a bit more gentlemanly than I thought he'd be. And so Azman has retained the inside line for Redgate corner. Side by side then for the lead of the race. Azman on the left, Simmons on the right, and Nazim Azman's going to hang on then, just about at least, from Ayrton Simmons behind him. Azman looking for that 2nd victory of the year, and what would be only his 3rd podium appearance of the season as well. In fact, only his 2nd podium appearance, but he's wide through the old hairpin again. And Ayrton Simmons knows now that he's got Azman on the ropes. He's starting to make a few mistakes. He's leaving the door open in a few critical places. The trouble is there are only 2.5 laps left in this race, so Simmons can't afford to hang around too much here. They're 2.5 seconds ahead of Lucas Pettersson, but of course Lucas will be starting to catch them now. And indeed, he was about 3 tenths quicker than them in the 1st sector alone this time. So that gap's already come down to about 2 seconds, and they're continuing to delay each other now. So I think they're only going to get closer to them now, that pack of cars behind, and that will not actually play into the hands of Ayrton Simmons one little bit. So Ayrton wants to get this done before anyone else arrives on his tail. Through they go, through the chicane. Verhagen and Chibangal pushing on as well. Now, is there another dive to be had up the inside? Yes, there is. He goes for it. Azman didn't cover it again, but Simmons has got even wider this time, and Nazim Azman will sweep back through into the race lead. So it's a good idea, that, from Ayrton Simmons, but he's got to get the car stopped in order to complete the manoeuvre. And for the 2nd lap in succession, Nazim Azman at the next corner is going to retain the race lead. But now Pettersson, Verhagen and Chibangal are right with them. So 2 laps to go. 5 cars fighting for the podium places in this penultimate round of the championship. And Nazim Azman heads down into Redgate corner, still with Ayrton Simmons stuck behind him. Simmons is 3 times a winner this season so far. Lucas Pettersson behind him has won as well. Neil Verhagen is the man in this group that hasn't actually been on the top step of the podium yet this season, but he's down in 4th position. He's the only one, actually, of these 5 that hasn't won, because Sasakor Chibangal has a race victory as well. The race wins have been spread across almost the entire field, actually. And so Neil Verhagen will be feeling it was about time he got a race victory, but unless there's some real silliness in front of him, I don't think he's going to be able to do that. But it is, the intensity is starting to ratchet up here, isn't it? You've got this battle between Simmons and Azman that has been getting rather feisty over recent laps, and so you never know, that might play into their hands behind. And Chibangal is now close to Neil Verhagen, actually, as well, for 4th position, so Neil, rather than going forward, might find himself going backwards here for too much longer. Right, stand well back, everyone. We're heading down to the Melbourne hairpin again. Simmons is probably not within striking range, but he seems to think he can come from a long way back. Actually, on this occasion, it's Azman that locks up, doesn't run too wide. And so on this particular lap, they stay single file and in the same order, but there's only 1 more lap to go. As Simmons given it his best shot, as he flat-spotted a tyre maybe with that big lock-up he had a lap ago. That will no doubt be a bit of a concern. Out across the line they go then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the start-finish line. Asman with a little breathing room maybe over Simmons, but not a huge amount. Lucas Pettersson there in third place, being given a 5-second track limits penalty. I noticed a lap or two he was being warned about track limits, and he's now been given a 5-second penalty. So Lucas Pettersson, unfortunately, is going to lose this podium finish because a 5-second penalty will drop him at least down to 5th. He might even lose 6th place to Hampus Eriksson, depending on how quick Eriksson's final lap is. So the blue number 22 car, whilst it's third on the road, is not going to be third in the end results, unfortunately. Now, in theory, that takes some pressure off of Ayrton Simmons, but Ayrton might not know about this, and even if he does, Pettersson's still well within his rights to attack, but actually he's dropped back a bit there through Coppice, so Ayrton Simmons now does have free rein to try and challenge Asman on the final lap. Pettersson, meanwhile, has his hands full with Neil Verhagen. He goes to the outside into the chicane, dives around the outside, but can't brake late enough. And so Pettersson hangs on, and now Sasakor Chimangold gets a run on the pair of them down the back straight, but a contact there actually between Pettersson and between Verhagen and Chimangold, excuse me, for 4th position. But again, they stay in the same order. Chimangold pulls back alongside, but one more corner to go then. And is Ayrton Simmons going to be able to get past Nazim Asman? I don't think he will. Oh, Hampus Eriksson's being given a 5-second penalty as well now, so in the end it won't make any difference really, but across the line they go, and Nazim Asman takes his 2nd win of the year. 2nd place goes the way of Ayrton Simmons, 3rd for Lucas Pettersson, 4th for Verhagen, with Chimangold 5th, 6th place for Eriksson, 7th Jewis, but there is provisionally your champion. Clement Novalak finishes in the position in which he started, actually 12th place, and that should be enough, despite the disastrous first lap that he and his championship rival Jonathan Hoggard had. That should be enough to seal the deal, and Clement Novalak, after a sterling season in which he's only won 2 races, but he's been the model of consistency, is, I think, with a race to spare, going to be crowned the champion of the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship. Jonathan Hoggard, by the way, did get back out on circuit, as we saw. He will finish in 15th place and set the fastest lap on the penultimate lap, so he has something he can take away from that race, but sadly that's not worth any championship points, so he will score just the solitary point for finishing in 15th place in that one. Nazim Asman, though, gets himself a good haul of points there, 21 to be precise, for winning, and he started 2nd, so he got 1 extra point for gaining a position as well, and he really had to fight for that one because Ayrton Simmons was right there with him, and it was a fantastic battle between the two of them. So they're still pushing on here, aren't they, back to the pit lane, but the checkered flag was shown a lap ago. They've completed 12 laps. The time is still, yes, there we go. I was panicking for a second because this was a very rapid in-lap they were doing there, but no, the race has finished, and it is Asman then that takes the race victory. Simmons in 2nd, but Verhagen, Novalak, for Carlin, is your champion. He pulls into the pit lane then, applause all round for all of the cars as they make their way in, but well, what must Clement Novalak have been thinking when halfway around the first lap he was off the road, contact with his big rival, car completely airborne, and that was very nearly the worst possible start to his race, but he survived it, he got to the end. 12th place finish should be enough. For the record, he will score 4 points for that, and he came into the race ahead anyway, so Hoggard had to beat him and simply couldn't do it. So this is a replay then, I believe we're about to see, of the first lap. This was so we'll keep an eye towards the back of the pack. So someone runs wide, I think, through the old hairpin. It stacks everything up. There we go, look, so sideways in front of everybody, and then there, Novalak, well, moves over into the right rear corner of Hoggard. So I would tend to think that Jonathan might have something to say about that, because whilst I don't think it was intentional by Clement Novalak, there's no doubt about it. Maybe have another look at that one, but it looked from first viewing as if Novalak sort of drifted right rather than Hoggard moving left. But on the first lap, it's so close between the cars, particularly that part of the circuit. The contact is very easy to have, but any time there's contact between the two championship contenders, especially under these circumstances, there will be a discussion, I'm sure. So, out of the car gets Novalak. It's, in fairness, a fairly subdued celebration, this. Now, that may be because he's not fully aware of the point situation, although I'm sure the team have discussed this pre-race. But I did spot as well that there's an awful lot of grass in the radiators of that Novalak car as well, so he was quite lucky to avoid any overheating issues. Anyway, none of this affects Nazim Asman. He is the winner. I'm fairly confident of that. Ayrton Simmons is second and Neil Verhagen in third. Simon Cole was fourth and Kian Dewis in fifth position. Lucas Pettersson sixth, Manuel Maldonado seventh, Caleb Frederick eighth, Ulysse de Pauw ninth, and Hampus Eriksson to round out the top 10. Then it was Chris Wright, Clement Novalak 12th, and that could be the 12th place that seals the deal for him. Josh Mason 13th, Pavan Ravichanka 14th, and Jonathan Hoggard got to the end, but in 15th place and a long way back after that unscheduled pit stop. So, dramatic stuff from the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship. And there is another race to come later on. We'll give you all the latest updates we can when we get to that race. That race will be starting at around about 3:45, and will be, well, potentially could still be the championship decider. We'll, as I said, give you the official confirmation of the points as and when we get it a little bit later on today. But fantastic stuff from the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship drivers. The final round of the championship will be coming up later on this afternoon.